It was a Tuesday morning when every major news outlet across the world echoed the same breaking headline. Trump slaps new economic tariffs on African nations. In Washington, Donald Trump stepped up to a shining podium, smiled, and said coldly, "It's time Africa learns the rules of the game. We'll protect America first." The room exploded in applause, but 7,000 miles away, in Ouagadougou, silence swept through the streets like a storm. Phones buzzed, radios crackled, markets panicked. Burkina Faso's farmers, small business owners, and mothers at food stalls looked at one another, stunned. Prices were already rising before the sun had even set. At the presidential palace, Ibrahim Traoré stood still, his hands clenched behind his back. He didn't speak. Not yet. In his eyes was something not many had seen before. Rage held back by strategy. One of his advisors whispered, "Mr. President, if we don't act, it won't just be Burkina. This will burn through Africa like fire." Traoré took a deep breath and whispered, "Let him strike first." Then he turned toward a sealed folder on his desk marked, "Confidential, Partnership Proposal." And he smiled. The days that followed were brutal. In Ghana, rice prices tripled. In Nigeria, protesters blocked ports. In Kenya, truckers abandoned their cargo in frustration. And in Burkina Faso, things were even worse. Traoré watched his people cry, not just from hunger, but from humiliation. Outside a clinic in Bobo Dioulasso, a mother begged a pharmacist for insulin. "I have 3 children," she whispered. "My husband, he died in the mines." The pharmacist lowered his eyes. "It's imported. We can't afford the tariff. I'm sorry." Traoré saw the clip later that night, quietly, alone in his office. No lights on. He closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling. They were being punished for being proud. Punished for standing on their own 2 feet. Across the Atlantic, the Western media laughed. One American anchor smirked. "Africa wanted independence. Looks like they can't afford it." Traoré stood up. Enough was enough. He called his press secretary. "Prepare a statement." But before he could begin writing, a secure phone lit up on his desk. Caller, unknown. He hesitated, then answered. What he heard next made him freeze. A voice said, "We heard what Trump did. We want to help, on one condition." Traoré's grip tightened on the phone. The voice on the other end was deep, calm, unfamiliar. "We've been watching your leadership. Africa needs people like you. The world does too. But this isn't charity. It's a partnership." Traoré didn't respond at first. "Who are you?" he finally asked. The voice paused, then said a name that made Traoré's eyes narrow. A name he never expected. A name the world had long forgotten, or feared. "Why now?" Traoré asked. The reply was swift. "Because the West thinks Africa is alone. Let's show them they're wrong." The line went dead. That night, Traoré didn't sleep. He sat with his military advisors and economists. He opened that confidential folder again. It wasn't just a partnership. It was a lifeline. But accepting it could change everything and spark a global response. By dawn, he'd made his decision. He stood at the balcony of the palace, looking over the sunrise breaking through the clouds. "They hit us with silence," he whispered. "Let's answer with thunder." At 9 a.m. sharp, his team released a chilling press teaser. "President Traoré will make a global announcement tomorrow. Everything changes." The world held its breath. The world waited anxiously. News outlets buzzed with speculation about Traoré's mysterious partner. Was it China? Russia? Some secret billionaire? But in Ouagadougou's presidential palace, the atmosphere was tense, yet electric. Traoré sat with his closest team in a dimly lit room. Maps of Africa and economic charts littered the table. "Whoever this is," one advisor said quietly, "could change everything." Traoré nodded, his eyes sharp. We need strength. Not just money, but respect. Someone who will stand with us. Outside, the city struggled under the weight of rising prices. Mothers in markets whispered about how cooking oil was now a luxury. Fathers worried if their children would eat tomorrow. Yet, despite the hardship, a quiet hope grew. In a small cafe, an old man tapped his walking stick, watching a TV screen where Western media mocked Africa's struggle. He shook his head. This is our moment, he whispered. For too long, we were told we were weak, but not anymore. Inside the palace, Traoré prepared to unveil the alliance that would shake the world. The next day's press conference was more than an event. It was a statement. When Ibrahim Traoré stepped onto the stage, cameras flashed like lightning. His voice was calm, but fierce. Today, I am proud to announce a partnership, not just for Burkina Faso, but for all of Africa. He paused, letting the words sink in. Behind him, the flag of Burkina Faso fluttered proudly alongside another, a flag no one expected. The crowd gasped. The alliance was with a powerful nation, one often misunderstood in the West. The choice shocked global leaders. Together, Traoré declared, we will build a future where Africa stands tall. No longer will we be pushed down by unfair tariffs or broken promises. The Western media scrambled, some dismissive, some alarmed. But in the streets of Ouagadougou, the news spread like wildfire. Children ran to tell their parents, workers stopped their tasks to listen to radios, and elders smiled with tears. A young woman in the capital said, "For the first time, I feel proud. This is hope." But far beyond the celebrations, whispers of tension grew. What would Trump say next? Would this new alliance survive the storm? Traoré's message was clear. This was only the beginning. The real strength of Traoré's leadership was not in headlines or speeches. It was in the hearts of the people. In villages and cities, stories poured in. A father in Koudougou sent a message. For months, I couldn't feed my children. Now the alliance brings promises of cheaper goods and jobs. A nurse in Ouagadougou shared her hope. With support, our clinics can finally get medicine. We can save lives. Traoré's phone buzzed non-stop with messages from citizens. Yet he never let the pressure cloud his focus. One evening, he visited a local school in a small neighborhood, listening as children sang songs of freedom and resilience. A little boy looked up and asked, "President Traoré, will Africa be free from hunger?" Traoré knelt down, holding the boy's hands. "We will make sure you and every child have what you need. This is just the start." Tears welled in the eyes of those watching. A leader who truly cared, standing not above, but with his people. But shadows loomed. Outside the joy, enemies planned, and Traoré knew the road ahead would be long and dangerous. Just days after the announcement, the global political stage grew restless. Western capitals whispered behind closed doors. Diplomats warned of consequences. Headlines screamed about dangerous alliances and unpredictable leaders. But in Ouagadougou, the atmosphere was electric. People gathered around radios and televisions, hearts pounding with hope. Shops painted flags, and streets filled with music and dance. Yet, beneath the celebrations, Traoré felt the weight of what was coming. His phone buzzed with urgent calls, warnings from friends, allies, even former rivals. Expect sanctions, misinformation campaigns, even threats, one voice warned. Traoré looked out over his city from the palace balcony, the sunset painting the sky orange and red. "We will not back down," he said quietly. "Our people deserve better than fear." That night, a mother in a small village prayed for peace, clutching her sleeping child. Thousands of miles away, in a sleek office, Trump's advisors plotted their next move. The war wasn't just economic. It was a battle for Africa's soul. Even heroes feel the weight of doubt. In the palace, Traoré walked the halls late at night. Faces of his people flashed in his mind. Hungry children, worried elders, hopeful youth. His advisors debated. Some urged caution, fearing the consequences might be too harsh. A trusted general said, "Sir, the West won't stop. They will isolate us." But Traoré shook his head, firm. "We must stand. If we falter, the future of our continent will crumble." Outside, rumors began to spread. Western media questioned Traoré's new partner, casting shadows on their intentions, sowing fear among the people. Traoré knew that many watched and waited, hoping he would fail. But in a small classroom, a young girl named Amina wrote in her notebook, "One day, Africa will rise. We just need someone to lead us." Traoré was determined to be that leader. He vowed to fight not just for his country, but for every child dreaming of a better tomorrow. The pressure was unbearable, yet Traoré never lost sight of why he began. One morning, he visited a refugee camp near the city's edge. Children played among tents patched with cloth. Mothers carried babies with tired smiles. A little boy tugged on Traoré's sleeve. "Sir, will we have food soon?" Traoré knelt down, eyes soft. "We will do everything to feed every family. You are not forgotten." A woman approached, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for caring." For a moment, the leader and the people stood together, not as ruler and subjects, but as one family. That day, Traoré made a promise to himself. No matter the cost, he would protect these faces, this hope. Back in the palace, he drafted a letter addressed not to governments, but to his people. "We face dark days ahead, but together, we will write a new story for Africa, one of strength, unity, and freedom." The fight was far from over, but Traoré's heart was fearless. The announcement sent shockwaves far beyond Africa. In Western capitals, diplomats hurried to plan new strategies. Some threatened sanctions, others whispered about isolating Burkina Faso economically and politically. Yet every time a new threat surfaced, Traoré's resolve only grew stronger. Back home, news of the backlash spread quickly. People listened with heavy hearts but clenched fists. One evening, a teacher in Ouagadougou told her students, "We are at a crossroads. They want us to bow, but we must stand tall." Meanwhile, social media exploded with voices from all over Africa. Messages of support, pride, and determination flooded in. Traoré knew the road ahead was full of danger, but also full of promise. He looked at a photo of his late mother on his desk and whispered, "I'm doing this for you, for all of us." In the quiet of his office, he drafted a letter to the African Union, urging unity like never before. The fight wasn't just Burkina Faso's. It was Africa's fight for freedom, respect, and a future without chains. Days turned into nights, filled with anxious anticipation. Ouagadougou's streets were alive, but tension lingered like a thick fog. At the central market, vendors spoke in hushed tones about shortages and rising costs. But they also spoke of something new, a spirit they hadn't felt in years, a hope that their young president wouldn't let them down. At the presidential palace, Traoré prepared for a historic broadcast. He knew millions would be watching, not just in Burkina Faso, but across the continent and beyond. His voice, calm yet full of fire, filled living rooms and radios. "We will not be silenced. Our partnership is a promise of resilience, unity, and strength. Africa will rise." Tears streamed down the faces of many who listened. In a humble home, a grandmother held her grandchild tightly and whispered, "Finally, someone fights for us." The streets burst into song, not just of celebration, but of defiance. This was more than politics. This was the heart of a revolution beating strong. Behind every strong leader is a lonely journey. Traoré often found himself awake in the dead of night, weighed down by the faces of those depending on him. He visited hospitals struggling to get supplies, schools with broken windows, and families torn by hunger. One night after a long day, a soldier approached quietly. "Sir," he said, "your people need to see hope." Traoré nodded and made a decision. He returned to the streets, walking among his people, without guards, without ceremony. He listened. He cried silently with mothers who lost children to sickness. A young man said, "We are scared, but we trust you." Traoré looked into his eyes and said, "I promise, we will not fail." The burden was heavy. The stakes were high. But Traoré carried it with the courage of a lion and the heart of a father. The partnership's announcement had sent a powerful message. But the fight was far from over. Late at night, whispers of sabotage and threats reached Traoré's ears. Power plants flickered mysteriously. Trucks carrying supplies were stopped at borders. The world was testing his resolve. One morning, Traoré visited a devastated village where water pumps had been sabotaged. Mothers and children stood silently, eyes hollow from thirst. He knelt beside a little girl who whispered, "Will they stop us?" Traoré's heart broke, but he forced a smile. "We will never stop," he said softly. "This land is ours. This people are ours." Back in the capital, his security team warned him of possible attacks. Yet, Traoré refused to hide. He appeared on television the very next day, standing in front of a crowd with a calm voice that masked a burning fire inside. "We face enemies who want to divide us, but we are stronger than their darkness." The city erupted in cheers again. This wasn't just a fight for tariffs. It was a fight for the soul of Africa. In a small home on the edge of Ouagadougou, a mother rocked her sick child, tears streaming down her face. Her husband had lost his job because of the tariffs. Food was scarce. She listened to Traoré's speech on a tiny radio, hope flickering like a candle in the dark. Her prayer was simple: "Please let this young leader be the light we need." Thousands of mothers whispered the same prayer. Across the city, Traoré worked tirelessly, meeting with doctors, teachers, and farmers. He promised to rebuild what was broken. One afternoon, in a crowded community center, he held a child in his arms and whispered, "I am with you." Tears welled in the eyes of everyone watching. It was no longer about politics. It was about survival, love, and future. Traoré's courage gave the people something they had lost: faith. The global spotlight intensified. News anchors debated. Analysts predicted chaos, and diplomats scrambled for answers. But in Ouagadougou, people stood united. Traoré's alliance was no longer a secret weapon. It was a symbol. On the streets, young and old marched hand in hand, chanting songs of freedom. International reporters arrived to witness the change, hope shining in every face. Traoré spoke at a rally. "This is our moment. No tariff, no threat can silence the heartbeat of Africa." As fireworks lit the night sky, a young woman whispered to her friend, "We're part of history." And for Traoré, the weight of the world rested lightly on his shoulders, carried by the love of a united people, ready to rewrite their destiny. The tension in Ouagadougou had never been greater. International pressure mounted. Sanctions tightened. Some allies wavered. Supplies ran dangerously low. Yet in the midst of hardship, Traoré's resolve shone brighter than ever. One evening, a devastating storm hit the city, flooding streets and destroying homes already weakened by poverty. Traoré visited the hardest-hit neighborhoods, walking through the mud, comforting mothers and children who had lost everything. His voice, though weary, was steady. "We will rebuild, not just our homes, but our future." That night, as the city struggled to recover, a young girl named Mariam whispered to her mother, "President Traoré is our hero. He fights for us, even when it's hard." Tears fell freely across the nation. The fight was brutal, but so was the heart of the people, and in every tear lay a promise. Africa would rise. With the world watching, Traoré's alliance grew stronger, not just through politics, but through people. Farmers learned new ways to grow food despite shortages. Teachers inspired children to dream bigger. Doctors fought to save lives with limited resources. Traoré visited a school where children sang their anthem with fierce pride. He saw hope in their eyes, the kind that no tariff or threat could destroy. Despite attacks and sabotage, the people stood united. A radio broadcaster in Ouagadougou said on air, "This is not just a leader's story, it's our story. A story of courage, unity, and unbreakable spirit." Traoré, in quiet moments, thought of his homeland's pain and its beauty. He vowed to carry this burden for every child, every mother, every soul longing for freedom. Because leadership, he knew, was not about power. It was about love. The world woke up to a new Africa. Tariffs remained, threats persisted, but the spirit of Burkina Faso and the continent was unbreakable. In the heart of Ouagadougou, thousands gathered in a historic rally. Traoré stood before them, eyes shining with tears and determination. "We have walked through fire. We have faced storms. But today we stand tall, together." The crowd erupted in joyous cries and songs that echoed through the night. Across Africa, from cities to villages, voices lifted in celebration. Traoré's journey was more than politics. It was a revolution of hope. And as the sun rose on this new day, one thing was clear. Africa's future belonged to its people and their fearless leaders. If this story touched your heart, if you feel the fire of Africa's spirit burning inside you, don't just watch, be part of this revolution. Like this video to stand with courage. Subscribe and join our family for more powerful stories that move the world. Drop a comment below. What part of Traoré's journey moved you the most? We want to hear your voice. Together we're not just viewers, we're the heartbeat of change. Thank you for being here. The revolution continues with you.